So I want you to give me some examples of classical and operant conditioning. So classical conditioning has to do with Pavlov. So some key words that I want you to be able to use and understand are things like conditioned stimulus, unconditioned stimulus, conditioned response, unconditioned response. So with Pavlov, if you remember, the conditioned stimulus was the bell because it had to be learned, or you have to learn to salivate at a bell. The conditioned response was the salivation at the bell. The unconditioned response is going to be salivation of something that's unlearned. So we normally salivate to the presentation of food. And then the unconditioned stimulus is a stimulus which elicits an unlearned response. So that's going to be the food. So in the case of your example, we listed several in class. Some haven't. You can go kind of look on the PowerPoints if you need like inspiration. So some of the ones that we listed were shampoo, your significant other, your dog, the squeaky door, those types of examples. So try to think of ones that might apply or that might be relevant to you in your life. They're everywhere. If you start looking, you'll definitely find some. So the next example that I want is operant conditioning. So operant conditioning, words that I want you to use in this example are reinforcement and behavior. So what this means is that any reinforcement increases behavior. There are two types of reinforcement. There's positive reinforcement, and I want you to think of this like in math. So positive is adding something that increases behavior, and then there is negative reinforcement. Negative reinforcement is taking away something, and then that increases behavior. So the specific example I gave in class is if I wanted to increase hand-raising behavior. Again, would never do this, unethical, unreasonable, but just an easy example. So if I wanted to increase hand-raising behavior and I wanted to use reinforcement to do so, if I wanted to use positive reinforcement, every time that you raise your hand, I would give you $1, $10. Pick a dollar amount. And that would increase hand raising, presumably. And if I wanted to increase hand raising, but use negative reinforcement has to have something already in place that you are taking away. So when you go into the room, the floor has an electric shock, or the floor has an electric impulse. And so when you put your feet down onto the floor, you automatically are going to get shocked. And the only way that I'm going to turn off the floor is if I see hands up. So that would also increase hand-raising behavior. In both of those scenarios, and what would be taken away? Because I know you're wondering, right? The sensation of the shock or the actual shock itself. So in both of those scenarios, what we see is an increase in behavior. You can choose to do positive reinforcement or negative reinforcement. Doesn't matter. But you want to pick a classical conditioning example and a operant conditioning example. Write both of those down and submit them on your 10-10 assignment board. All right. So if you have any questions, let me know. That's it.